I've paid thousands of dollars in courses to learn what you're basically teaching on your podcast for free. What you're putting out there is so valuable. So, I just really want to acknowledge you, and I definitely send everyone to your podcast.
You were virtually one of the first mentors that I looked up to and started following. You're always one step ahead of the game. So I just wanted to give you kudos and props for that, because lots of people are watching, lots of people are learning from it.
Tucker and the whole TTM crew, Dan and Chris, thanks so much for your support. I love what you guys do, and a huge fan. Having this support's huge. So I'm grateful for that.
What's up, everybody out there in listener land? This is episode 272 of the Real Dealz podcast, and we're back this week. Got a great episode for you, but even more importantly, we are back from being banned off of iTunes. That's right, iTunes wiped us off the face of the map. And you know what? They didn't give us a single reason why. It just happened. So for those of you guys that are my podcasting friends, be weary. We're obviously on a number of other platforms right now as well. But iTunes is the 800-pound gorilla that's been hosting most of podcast listens over the last, we'll call it 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And they just decided to make our show disappear one day. And we said, what in the world's going on? We didn't get an answer. We didn't get a warning. We didn't get a reason. We didn't get anything. The only thing we can attribute it to is that we had some keyword descriptions in the title to try and help people find the show. That wasn't anything crazy. It wasn't anything other people don't do as well. So that's the only thing we can attribute it to. So anyway, they wiped us off the face of the earth, but we're back. So this is kind of like the relaunch episode of the Real Dealz podcast now that we're back on iTunes. Now, I will say the one thing that we cannot do, which is incredibly unfortunate, and I'm pretty pissed about it, but there's not really much I can do, because iTunes, all they do is just take support questions via, email or online chat, and then you put it in a dark hole, and hopefully somebody responds. But they basically took all of our ratings and reviews over the last 5 years and made them go poof, disappear. So we had 300 plus ratings and reviews, all 5-star, with the exception, I think, 1 4-star review. They're all gone. So for those of you guys that feel like you get something out of the show, you have gotten something out of the show, you enjoy the show, you like listening to me, and you like listening to our guests, I would love it if you could go back into iTunes and leave a new rating and review, and also make sure that you're subscribed to the show. I don't know if them removing us and putting us back in will cause any issues with your subscription to the episodes as they come out, so make sure you're subscribed to the show, and please, if you would, I would very much appreciate it if you could go leave a rating and review. Because like I said, we had 300 plus ratings and reviews that are now gone into the ether, and iTunes won't do anything to help us out with that. So those SOBs over at iTunes, I tell you what. But anyway, we're back, and I've got a great episode this week. I know you guys are going to dig it. Last week's show, as we put it out onto iTunes, we realized we didn't have a show on iTunes, but last week's show was all about the DFA and the last 5 years. We've had our mastermind group, the Deal Finders Academy, around for 5 years now. We've made some amazing relationships. We've met a ton of awesome investors, and we'd love to make many of you guys who are listening part of that mastermind group, so make sure you reach out to us if you have not already. There's a link in the show notes as always, but we put together a new page that kind of shows you guys exactly what it's all about, and then from there you can simply just book a call with Dan. You can talk to him, and hopefully we can find a spot for you in the DFA. Now, beyond that, this week's show, on our reintroduction to iTunes show, I've got a great interview for you. I've got an individual that I actually talked to a few weeks ago on the phone for the first time. He is down in the San Antonio area, and his name is Quentin Flores, and he's got a very interesting story. He was in the, we'll call it weed business, but he had a really rough upbringing, kind of came from very meager beginnings, very difficult and challenging childhood. And he's done a ton with it, and he's got himself pointed in a very positive direction. He's just very positive about life. I really like his energy, and I look back on where I was 11 years ago, which is basically how old he is, or 11 and a half years ago. And he has a lot of those same desires and that hustle and just trying to make stuff happen that I did back then. So it's cool to kind of take a trip back down memory lane for myself while I'm interviewing somebody who's trying to make their mark on the world right now, and really just learn all about their business. Because At the end of the day, there's a million ways to make $1 million, and there's a million ways within real estate to make $1 million as well. His business and my business are very different, although we deal with the same product. That product is real estate. He is predominantly a wholesale business where we are a redevelopment company. But the driver for our projects and his deals are the same thing, which is marketing directly to sellers, trying to find those deals at a discounted price. They then sell them off to somebody else at a slightly less of a discount. We then generally take them down. We do wholesale too. I'll talk about one we're wholesaling this week, but we generally take them down and we redevelop them in some way, shape, or form, and we put them out to the retail market and we sell them that way, and that's how we make our money. And so it's just a different business model. They're a very high volume business model. We are not a high volume business model, but we're a really high margin business. So it's a little bit different, but again, the origin of how we find our deals is all the same. They do a bunch of stuff that we don't do. We don't have a cold call sales for necessarily, but we have one acquisitions person that does some cold calling and is on the phone all the time, which is Chris, and he says he's got a floor of a bunch of different people. So very different businesses, but the same goal at the end of the day, which is finding discounted properties. So I think you guys are really going to enjoy this interview. He had a lot of stories about he was incarcerated for a while. He was slanging weed for a while, which obviously here in Oregon it's legal now, so there's nothing illegal about selling weed other than the fact that you've got a lot of competition because there's a dispensary on virtually every corner, so the cost of weed is very, very low, and it almost doesn't even make sense to grow it. In his case, back in the day, he was buying it in places where it was very readily available and taking it to places where it wasn't, and that was widening his margin. So it's really just a business, right? It's funny though, I was thinking back to when I was younger, and the second job that I had, I worked at a gas station, and I worked there with a bunch of other, we'll call them kind of quasi-no-goods at the time. I'm not glorifying this by any means, but it's just what we did. I was very entrepreneurial even in my youth. I didn't have the lemonade stand, so to speak, but I was always thinking about ways to make money. And weed was a way that we made money too. And so we had this gas station that we ran, me and a handful of other guys, and we were essentially the managers and the gas pumpers all together. And so we ran that as a place to basically traffic a bunch of weed out of there. So people would pull in, they'd get gas, they'd get weed, they'd pull out. And I don't even know how much weed we moved through there, but it was a ton. And we were making like $6 an hour, pumping gas, but obviously we made a ton more than that moving weed. Now, we didn't get caught like Quentin did and didn't go to jail, but it's funny because we walked similar paths, at least as far as being young entrepreneurs. And I only say that now, again, not to glorify it because it was just back in the 90s when weed was illegal, but it's legal now, right? So it's like selling anything else, although you shouldn't sell it to obviously little kids. And like I did mention in the show, don't do edibles. Bad idea if you're not a weed smoker. That'll very different experience. Let me tell you firsthand. I don't touch them anymore, and if you do a very small amount. That's my little golden nugget for you this week. Now, I don't want to get too far down that rabbit hole, but let's jump into the housekeeping items real quick. Number one is our Driving for Dollars app. We have a new tier coming out. It'll be out probably end of this week, beginning of next, which will allow you to basically create unlimited amounts of property addresses and export those property addresses to yourself or to us. And they can then be skip traced outside of the app, which will be very helpful because then we can charge very little to actually use this technology to then have your bird dogs, your Uber drivers, people on your team building as big a list as you want of just the properties, because really that's the asset. And then once you get that, you can skip trace them. You can pull public records, you can do all those things, and we can help you do that outside of the app so that we can pull it out of the iTunes monopoly and the 30 cents on every dollar that they take that runs through the iTunes store. So keep an eye out for that. We're pretty excited about it. Had a conversation with a friend of mine, Ian Morrell, up in Seattle, who runs Caliber Real Estate. He's going to be using it for a bunch of people that they're hiring to basically go around and build huge lists of Driving for Dollars leads, and then from there we can skip trace them and he can start his marketing machine and all that. So that's what it's intended for. Obviously, there's other tiers that do skip tracing within the app, which will serve a great purpose for those of you that use it not as much, but for those of you guys that want to build huge lists or you have teams, that'll be a great tier for you. So keep an eye out for that. Second housekeeping item, again, I mentioned at the beginning of the show, but if you're interested in joining our Deal Finders Academy Mastermind group, we would love to hear from you. We're actively looking to add members to the group, and again, it's been around for 5 years. So go to the show notes page, click on the link, and you can get a rundown of everything that's included, and you can see all the members and just really, we kind of pull back the curtain a little bit and show you what our DFA is all about. Now, beyond that, what's going on with me and TTM over the course of the past week? Well, it's been kind of a hectic couple of weeks for me. I was back in Bend last weekend. Played a lot of golf, hung out, did a fair bit of adult beveraging, and did a kid-free trip. So I highly advise that for any of you guys that have kids. It's nice to go on a kid-free trip every now and again, as long as you can do it. Fortunately, we have family in town here, and it made it easy to leave the kiddos for a few nights anyway. And so I went there and kind of enjoyed, you wake up in the morning, you don't have kids that, you have to change diapers and you have to get food ready and they're crying and they're screaming. It was nice. I remembered what it was like not to have kids for a few days. So that was fun. But being in Bend just reminded me why in the world I don't live there. I don't know. It may be in the cards here at some point in the future, folks, because it's an amazing place. If you haven't been there, I strongly advise you go check it out. We did a lot of really cool stuff. We went to Lava Lands. We played golf. We went and floated the Deschutes. We did all kinds of things. And it's a really cool community that's really kind of grown into itself now. Has all kinds of amenities, great restaurants. It's an outdoorsy type community. It's just a great place. And so I strongly encourage you guys to go check it out if you have not been there. Now, beyond that, next Tuesday, this will come out Friday, which is tomorrow. I'm recording it on Thursday. But next Tuesday, I'm going to be up in Seattle. And I'm going to be at the Fixated event that Taro is putting on, and the whole Fixated crew. They've got me up there to speak again, so I'm going to be talking all about direct seller marketing, which we talk about a lot, but I'm going to make it a very interactive session. I want to talk directly with you guys, take a lot of Q&A. You guys can put me on the hot seat and see if you can extract some more info out of me that I don't normally give in our canned presentations. But I'm going to be up there for the night, and it should be a good time. It's in Bellevue, I believe. And it's going to be fun. It's going to be a good time. So I'm looking forward to it. So if you are in the neighborhood and you want to pop by, I'd love to say hello, and I'll be there all night. So that's what we got going on there. As far as here within my business, we got a ton going on this week. We've got a couple of closings. One is a wholesale deal. I call it our Stinky Pig wholesale deal. We wholesaled it off to a friend of mine here in town, and it's a great deal. They actually, we got a decent wholesale fee on the front end, but they got a great deal. They're going to do really well on it on the back end, and he actually texted me after we signed the contract, and he's like, wow, wholesale deal that actually has meat on it. I didn't know they existed these days, and to be totally honest, he's probably true, at least here in Portland. But we passed on the deal mainly because we were just too full. It was out of our area. It was going to be difficult with all the other stuff we have going on. We have 2 other acquisitions this week that we're buying to take down and renovate. And so we decided to float this one down the wholesale river, and it'll be a great project for them. And we were able to make a nice little wholesale fee on the front. Beyond that, we've got another project that we're buying in Lake Oswego. It's going to be a big add-on project. It's in the First Edition neighborhood. Probably exit that one somewhere between 1.2 and 1.3 million once we're done with it. We're buying at 550, and we got to do some construction in the middle. And then we're buying another great project in West Lynn, which is really a lot like a previous project that we did in Lake Oswego. It's kind of a tri-level property. It's got about a 15,000 square foot lot, RV parking, great street. It'll sell really, really easily. So we're going to start work on that this next week. And then, of course, we've got one that we're selling as well in Southwest Portland that we've got a really nice margin on. And Dunthorpe, our big $3.5 million new build. We are close, folks. It's starting to look like a house. Siding goes up this week. I've been posting pictures. We're going to shoot another $1 million builds this next week. And it's turning out awesome. That house is going to be amazing. It's going to be the nicest house that we've ever built, design-wise, everything. Obviously, it's the second time building it. We built it the first time in the Street of Dreams. That actually is going on this next week, so I'm going to be going to the block party for that, the kickoff party for all past builders this next week. But it's the second time we're building this house, and it's really turning out amazing. The design is going to be phenomenal, and I can't wait to show you guys more. So if you're not, follow me on Facebook and Instagram, or friend me on Facebook. I got a few slots left. I think I'm close to that 5,000 mark. But Instagram, of course, you can follow me, and I'm going to be posting pictures as we're putting tile in this week. We got siding going up. We got all kinds of things going on. So I'll keep you guys posted on that. But without further ado, I got a long interview coming up with Mr. Quentin Flores. I know you guys are going to dig it. The guy's a beast. He's got a lot of motivation. He's got a lot of information. And I know you guys are going to love the interview. So without further ado, let's get into the rest of the show. All right, Real Dealz podcast listeners, I want to talk quickly about our show's sponsor, Iron Bridge Lending. If you guys have not reached out to Iron Bridge already to talk to them about funding some of your upcoming flip projects, I highly encourage you to do so. I've known the owner of Iron Bridge for a very long time. I personally borrowed millions of dollars from them over the years to do a number of different projects, and I can say without a doubt, they are the best hard money lending company I have ever come across, and that is the reason why they are the sole sponsor of this show. I've had a lot of other companies reach out to me and want to sponsor this show, but I just won't do it. I feel like I need to be genuine in who we have sponsoring the show, and it needs to be somebody that I've personally done a ton of business with. So I personally vouch for their ability to be the best, hands down, in the world of hard money lending. You won't find better programs, you won't find better terms, and they're lending or will be lending in over 20 states. So chances are, if you're hearing this in whatever state you're in, it's definitely worth it to check out their website, reach out to them, see if they're lending in your state, and if they are, I would absolutely encourage you to do business with them. Another very cool thing to note is that they have a program for most rehabs where you can actually borrow up to 90% of the purchase price. Now, this is given the fact that you are actually buying a deal, which if you're listening to the show, that means you probably are. But if you have an actual deal on the table, they'll fund up to 90% of your purchase price, and they'll even give you rehab funds on top of that, which means that it only takes 10% down to get into a project, which is unbelievable in the hard money world. So do yourself a favor, reach out to Iron Bridge Lending, have a conversation with them, see if they're a good fit for you and for your next project. I can guarantee you that you'll be happy that you did. All right, everybody out there in listener land, welcome back. I've got a great interview for you this week. I got an individual that I actually chatted with offline a couple of weeks ago, and he hit me up and he said, you know what? I'm down to do podcasts. And I said, well, guess what? I got a podcast. So here we go. We can do it. So without further ado, I've got an individual on here. He is from San Antonio, Texas. He is the owner of QHome Solutions. He is the new owner, or one of the owners, of Infinity Cash Offer. And he's just an all-around young hustler. Welcome to the show, Quentin Flores.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited. I've heard nothing but good things about the podcast, man. So when I found out about it, I was like, what? Started going through some of the previous episodes. Yeah, man, I'm really happy to be here, really happy to inspire, share my story, let you guys know what's led up into my real estate business. And we got some neat things that we're going to be talking about, me and Tucker here. So be excited, everybody.
Oh, yeah. Well, here's a little Snapple fun fact for you. This past week, iTunes decided out of nowhere that after 5 years of our podcast, they were going to just make us disappear into the ether. So they yanked us off iTunes. So you are the first episode now that we have been reinstated back onto iTunes. So it's kind of like you're our first episode, but 5 years later.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So, yeah, I heard one of the best platforms for podcasting is Spotify, man. That's definitely something you guys should look into.
Oh yeah, we're there. But iTunes has been the 800-pound gorilla in the room for the last 5 years. They're not treating podcasts all that well. So hopefully Spotify does something. Maybe they'll pay Joe Rogan to go exclusive on there, and then that'll be the place to be, right? We'll see.
Joe Rogan is ridiculous, man. I love his podcast though. I feel like every time I'm listening to a show, he tries to swing it around to DMT, like every single time. The guy could be like, yeah, man, I lost my family in a fire. To be like, oh, wow, man, that's cool. Have you ever tried DMT? Like, I'm like, all right, Joe Rogan, But yeah, podcast is fun, man. Thank you so much again, Michael Tucker, for having me on this podcast. I just got done doing one a couple of, last week with a guy named Michael Tucker. So I'm like, man, it's just like Tucker party right now, bro. I have a lot of friends named Tucker now. Let's go.
Apparently. So let's jump into it. You got a lot going on. Like I said in the intro, but give us a little backstory. You're a young guy, 28 years old?
Yeah, I'm 28. My birthday is literally in 2 days.
So there you go. So I'm thinking back when I was 28, which was 11 years ago. We were in the middle of the shit. Things had just started to unwind. The world was collapsing. I was in the middle of a number of projects. I owned a mortgage company. We ended up building my development company out of the shit, we'll call it. But that was a long time ago. But I remember being back then. I remember having all that desire and just really trying to make my way in this business. So talk to me or our audience kind of about your journey to this point, getting into this business, where you've been, where you've come from, and then we can go into where you're headed.
Yeah. So my primary market that I currently am in, and I also live here, is San Antonio, Texas. So I wasn't born in San Antonio. I was born in Cleveland, Ohio. When I was a kid, I grew up off of East 1999 in St. Clair's. And if you ever listen to Bone
Thugs and Harmony, East 1999. Yeah.
East 1999, you know what I'm saying? So, bro, that's where I grew up, man. So I loved Cleveland. Cleveland was always cold, so I'm adjusted to it. I come down here to Texas, man. I can't walk outside without a heater and rain hitting me in the face at the same time. So, I grew up. The only reason I was born in Cleveland, and my mom at the time, she was single, so my mother's an orphan. My mother, her mom gave her up at birth. So we never knew anybody else besides my mom. By the time my mom was 14, she had her first kid, which is my older sister, Jennifer. And then she had two more right after that. And then she had me when she was about 23 years old. So, my mom is all we have. We don't have any crazy immediate family. But when my mother met my father was at the time, he was slanging methamphetamine. So my dad was trafficking meth from in between San Antonio, Texas, and Cleveland, Ohio, and the states that govern the size, the differences in location. So I mean, my dad ended up getting caught in Cleveland where he had to serve prison, and my mother, he convinced my mom to come up there and stay with him. So my mother took all her three kids, the first three, I wasn't born yet, her first three kids on a bus with some bologna and some bottles of water and some mustard and some bread, and went straight up to Cleveland. And she met with my dad. My dad, before he went to prison, had me. She ended up having me. So I mean, I was born in the middle of July, and I mean, it was beautiful, man. So I loved Cleveland. Cleveland is a big part of my life. But when my dad got out of prison and he was on parole, we were living in the back of his ex-wife's house, and there was a shed in the back that had electricity, and that's where we lived. Every now and then we'd have to go around to the side to use the restroom in a bucket. I thought that was normal. You know what I'm saying? It's just crazy. But we had a ghetto rig electricity to that building too. So we were stealing water, we were stealing electricity, and we were just straight up living poor, man. So that had been like the first 5 to 8 years of my life. By the time my dad got out of prison, he ended up violating his parole, and he took all of us into a bus, and we all drove straight down to San Antonio, and we ended up moving in my grandma's house. And I grew up on the west side of San Antonio in Las Palmas, which is highly populated by Latin Kings. So this was in the early 90s, you know what I'm saying? I'm kind of going through all of this stuff. My mom and my dad separated by the time I was 12. My father was super abusive, super controlling. I mean, basically the devil in every single kind of way. He beat the crap out of us I couldn't even eat his cereal. I couldn't even eat his cereal without him beating the shit out of me. So, I mean, we all grew up getting our asses beat by my dad. And by the time my mom separated from him, I was 12 years old. My mom ended up getting remarried to another man. And the dude is only 10 years older than me. He's my stepdad. And, I love him. I love him. He's my father in my eyes. But from 12 to 21, I learned the entire business of selling and trafficking marijuana. So, I mean, I wasn't any small timer, bro. Like, I know we're going to talk about some fun pot stories, which is pretty cool. And I got definitely some stories to tell. But I mean, by the time I was 14 years old, I learned the terminology of marijuana. I learned what a nickel weighed out to, 2.5. I learned what a dime was, 5.0, 20 sack, you know what I'm saying, 10 grams, 14 grams, a half ounce, 28 full ounce, 112 quarter pound, 224 half pound, 448 full pound. So I got the whole thing in my head. And I mean, dude, I'm telling you, my hands are so rowdy from counting so much money. I could kill someone with my hands. I'm kidding. But I've been doing product, I've been doing supply, and I've been doing demand my whole life. I mean, from 14, when my stepdad taught me how to sell pot, it was a mixture of my stepdad and my mom. My mom knew a little bit too, so we would go back and forth. But my stepdad mentored me a lot into learning how to do it, because when he would go to work.
Your stepdad, what you're telling me, he wasn't exactly a beacon of law-abiding citizenship either. He was a nice guy, obviously, but he dabbled in some questionable at the time. Now it's legal, right? I'm in Oregon. It's legal. There's a weed store on every corner here now, so it's like selling candy. There's no difference, right? Except if you haven't done edibles, don't do edibles first, because that'll mess you up. But point being, it's legal now. Yeah.
My stepdad is basically my father, man. I mean, I love him to death. Him and his dad as well. Like my grandfather was a Vietnam veteran, and he's like my step grandfather, but I call him grandpa because this is the first time I ever actually had a real parent. You know what I'm saying? My dad, the only thing I ever remember of him was his fist in my face. And my mom, I thought for the longest time that was how it was going to be. You know what I mean? I thought that a woman and a man are together, and they decide that if the man decides to hit his wife, that it was okay. You know what I mean? Because that's the environment that I had grew up in. I would go to my school all the time with bruises and stuff, talking to people about what was happening. And they all thought, oh my God, what are you doing still in there? Why are you getting tortured? I didn't know it was a bad thing, man. It's crazy. I felt like I was in a hole, And when I finally got out, I felt like I was free, And I never wanted to go back to my dad. My dad's still alive today, and he's living in my grandmother's house. And my grandmother passed away. He pretty much ransacked the whole crib. So I'm probably the total exact opposite of anything my father ever accomplished, but I made it a goal to be something greater than my dad was because he had brought us through so much. I mean, my siblings are like literally emotionally scarred from this. You know what I'm saying? My brother even got it worse, man. My brother would try to protect us, but he wasn't strong enough. But we grew up getting beaten and tortured. And when I say that, I mean, it was that bad, man. So when I finally got the taste of what a good father was, his name's Tony. Tony showed me a lot, man, about the game, about life, about things in general that I didn't think that I would ever understand. And, people, I mean, will say what they want to about somebody selling drugs or whatever, but I learned so much from that game, and I learned so much about people, and I learned so much about relationships and how powerful those things can be. I mean, I credit a lot to that time frame that I was doing that. So, I mean, from 14 to 17, I was selling pot throughout all of high school, and then I graduated one day. Well, not from school. I graduated from what I was doing small time. I dropped out in 9th grade, man. The only job I ever had in my whole life was when I was 17 years old, I was working at Jack in the Box. That's the only job I've ever had, man. So when I left Jack in the Box, I quit Jack in the Box specifically because my weed business was taking off. So there was a drought sometime between 2007 and 2009 where you couldn't find like oregano. So, I mean, I actually had a really amazing connect introduce me to high quality stuff, which was more medicinal because, California had just legalized pot and now there were dispensaries all over the place. I think Arnold Schwarzenegger was the governor at the time. The governor. And, that would begin my empire that I would build and I would grow into. So, I mean, there was so much money to be made on the table. There was no way in hell I was going to let all that stuff slide by and me not grasp every minute of it because I'd already educated myself on it. So, I mean, there in California, I would go to Long Beach, Cali. In Long Beach, California, I could score a bow, and a bow is a pound for those who are listening. I'm not trying to teach you how to slang weed or anything, but it is what it is, okay? But a bow was worth $995. And if I brought it all the way to Texas and avoided border lines, even sometimes going through the border, by the time it hit Texas soil, it was worth over $5,500 per pound. So that was my quote unquote taste of my wholesale fee. If we're gonna like start comparing.
Yeah. Well, it's a good thing. So today, just to relate it to our audience, in Oregon, we're legal, right? There's an oversaturation of the market. We're just comparing this to business, right? Because right now it's legal in Oregon, so business is business, right? The street value on a let's say dispensary level, you sell your weed to a dispensary if you're a grower now. Some people have one off, two off, a handful of clientele that they sell to directly. But if you're a grower, you sell to a dispensary. Price was as low as $800 a pound to a dispensary. Wow. Now it's bumped back up to about $1,200, which makes it just barely profitable to grow as an indoor operation. So it's been an interesting thing. I segue there, but that's what the pricing is now. Back then, the point was you could buy it for $8,000, you could sell it for $5,500. Obviously, there's margin in between, and you probably chopped it up. You sell it in smaller quantities, it widens your margin, right?
Exactly. It's insane how that even works because my business today operates the same kind of way. So, we have a nationwide cash buyer that we move a lot of our product to today, and he likes buying bundles. So I package together multiple houses for him, and then we offload to be able to create our spread and profit. I mean, the bigger of a package I give him all at once, the better that it is. So we escrow everything all together, and then he drops one money bomb, and boom, we're able to capitalize on that amount of money. It's the same thing. I brought it back over here at wholesale prices, found it at a wholesale price, and then, remarketed it out to my network of people who would also buy at a wholesale price, but enough for themselves to still make money when they quantify it, of course, and they do what they're trying to do, whether they're trying to create passive income, owner finance in a wrap, or they're trying to buy it and flip it, or, just buy it to buy it and hold on to it and see what happens to it later because appreciation is going to happen in that area, So there's so many different ways that you can buy property. And I learned so much and I hate to say it, but, it's the same thing. Instead of stinky weed, I'm looking for stinky houses. You know what I'm saying? Ultimately, it's like it's just business. But in 2012, well, I'd say 2011 is when I got my whole entire hotel room raided, and I was going to be serving. Luckily, they didn't have a warrant, so I was able to get a lot of the charges dropped. But I was going to serve a year in prison. I did a year in Dominguez, and I had to do three years of parole. So I mean, before I went to prison in 2012, I showed out for my wife. You know, it's I just met my girlfriend at the time. I showed out for her real quick. I took her to a music festival, and that music festival was amazing. We had such a good time. A lady friend of mine had decided that she was going to come and meet with us, and when she came and met with us, we also had the we had some room in our hotel. So with the room that we had in our hotel, she brought her boyfriend with her, and her boyfriend's one of my good friends today. He's been my best friend, actually. We've been doing business for over 7 years, and he's my business partner. His name's Garrett Sanchez, and Garrett introduced me to real estate. We sat there after the whole night of partying, and we were chopping it up, and it was like, dude, so what do you do? Because I didn't see you pull out not one credit card, and you've been paying for cash this entire time. And I was like, well, I was about to go to jail, but I had X amount of money. The cops took everything I had, bro, but like $10,000 to $20,000. And I had it hidden inside of the stove that was in the hotel. They took everything else that I had, but the money that I had there. I mean, they took all the money that was out everywhere else, but I had like a solid 15, 17 grand. It was almost 20,000. And it was that amount of money that I had left to survive on. So, I mean, I had nothing when I started that business. I knew what it was like to be bad nothing and then build it up again if I had to. So, I mean, with that amount of money, I went and I took my lady, and we had fun. And, when I met Garrett was like, dude, you should get into real estate. If you're doing this, it's almost the same thing. And so I was like, dude, I mean, I'm down. And he was like, you don't need money to get into real estate. And that had been like the start of everything. So, I mean, I got out of jail. I went into jail with like, I don't know, a high school degree in selling pot, and I came out with a PhD in real estate. I learned about investing. I learned about time versus money. I learned about how to retire myself through real estate investing. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I read Darren Hardy's The Compound Effect. It was just amazing. It was like full-blown self-growth. And I experienced true solitude for the first time because I felt like I had no one.
Well, you were like you're the guy that actually took the time to improve himself, as opposed to a lot of guys that don't. My wife's cousin, he's been in and out, I don't know, 4 times now. And every time he comes out a bigger fuckhead than the one he went in. And he doesn't take the time to actually improve himself. Smart guy. He could do a million things, but he doesn't take that time to do anything positive with it. And he just ends up back there afterwards. So that's great that you did that.
It changed my life, man. Honestly, like when I read Darren Hardy's The Compound Effect, and that's probably one of my favorite books. I highly recommend it to everybody listening to this book, but it taught me the value of my time. You know what I'm saying? And nobody knows what the value of their time is until they put a dollar amount on it. So I remember I took the time test where it was like, I think I'm worth $2 million. And then I found out that the average lifespan of a human is about 78 years on this planet. So, I mean, as sad as that is, if you live past 78, you're one of like the top 5% that make it there. So, I mean, if I'm already 28 years old, that means I have 50 more years on this planet to produce that amount of money. So if I were to do the math and break it down on that many months, 12 months times 50 years, and then we divide that number by the amount of money that I think I'm worth, and then we divide that number again by 30 days, and then we divide that number again by 24 hours. At $1 million, which is what I thought I was valued at, that's maybe less than I'd say $34 a day, $34 to $50 a day. For the next 50 years, I have to make sure that I'm consistently producing $34 to $50 a day if I want to hit $1 million. And I realized I undervalued the crap out of myself because now I appreciated my time. I bumped that number up, and I set it in stone at 1 billion. And that amplified that number completely differently, And once I understood the value of my time, I realized that every minute that I spent in this place was me literally taking money out of my invisible pockets, because you don't get pockets when you're in jail. my invisible pockets, and I had to light it on fire because I would never get that time back. So that whole time that I spent there was total solitude, total peace, and just me trying to find myself. Because I knew if I wanted the things that I always wanted in my life to come my way, I had to improve my value as a person. You know what I mean? If you want to manifest something in your life, you have to raise your value. And the only way that you do that is by forgiving yourself for what you did, taking 100% responsibility for all the bad things that happened in your life, all the good things and all the bad things. Because without the bad things, we wouldn't know what the good things felt like. And then push myself forward and take control of my life. So by the time I got out, I was ready. I spent the $5,000 that I had left on a mentorship, and I joined a company just to find out I needed 625 credit score and 20,000 in reserves to invest in real estate. But I mean, I sat at this classroom, bro, for like a few years, man, and it was awesome. I was the only guy there that was like 22, 23 years old trying to figure this shit out. And, one of the mentors comes up to me finally, and after like a year and a half, they're like, Q, you've been here this entire time. You haven't bought in your first property. What's going on? And the guy said, I told him, I was like, dude, I got money, but I don't got money that's clean. And my credit's terrible. I'm working on this shit. And he was like, bro, you don't need money to get into real estate. And I was like, okay, what do you mean? And he told me about wholesaling. And that was the start of everything. A year and 8 months later, I closed my first deal after massive persistence. I made $2,100. And then on my 25th birthday, my sister flipped my cake in my face, and that was the push that I needed. Me and my sister got into an argument, and she flipped my cake in my face.
Yeah, I would imagine that was maybe not a nice flip.
I thank her for that, though, bro, because that's what I needed. I mean, it was the day before that had happened, the day before my 25th birthday. Like 2 days before that, I closed my first deal. That $2,100, I went and I bought a suit. It'd been the first time I ever actually like bought a suit that was tailored to me. Every other suit looked like an old man's suit that didn't fit me. That suit that was tailored to me, you know what I mean? And I felt good. And then my sister, she threw the cake in my face, fucked up my suit. I was so pissed. I remember leaving that bitch crying, and she was just thinking that, and she told me like, that I would never actually make it, and that I wouldn't do this and I wouldn't do that. Of course we were angry. I love my sister. My sister Jennifer is amazing. She was like my mother because she raised me too. My mom was a kid when she had us. So her and my older sister grew up together. She was 14 when she had my sister Jennifer. So by the time she was 28, my sister was already 14 and raising us, So I love my sister, man, and I thank her for doing that, for flipping that cake in my face, because that was what I needed. That same year, I went on to close 10 deals. That next year, I went on to close 50. Then the year after that, I closed 100. This year, we're already almost at like 70. I stopped counting because it's just insane. But, glory be to God on everything. Everything that I've been able to accomplish up to this point has all been to God, man. But, I mean, wholesaling was probably one of the best things that I've ever learned that has ever happened to me. And, learning the systems and the data and all the things that you can do in the office, the structure, company structure, payroll. I mean, there's just so many different ways that you can run a real estate business. You know what I'm saying? So many people preach passive income. I've seen it with my own eyes that you can do $1 million a month. I know because I've done a quarter of it in wholesaling. So, I mean, if you're talking about building a real estate tycoon, the key is going into other markets. You know what I'm saying? And it's literally the same thing that I was doing before. I would go somewhere outside of my market and I'd find property at a discounted price, and I would package it together to wholesale it in my current market to a buyer. And I would sell it at a wholesale price so I can go back and get more. And it's the same concept. So I redid it over and over and over and over again, man. So now we're at an office. We went from 100 square feet at the beginning of, I'd say, mid last year to now 1,000 square feet to 1,600 square feet, and now we're going into 4,000 square feet. We're just going to stop dicking around and really go all in with it. But we're at 20 guys in my current office, and we're all crunched together in here. It's insane. But we run a full-blown sales force, and all we do today is just find discounted property. I do a little bit of everything from buy and hold to flipping to owner financing. I dabble in multifamily. I currently own 3% in an apartment complex in downtown San Antonio, across the street from San Antonio College. And it's been amazing. I syndicated that deal. So we specialize in San Antonio on curative title work. So for those that are listening and don't know what that means, that is basically me finding the low-hanging fruit that most average wholesalers and flippers don't want to deal with and clearing the title on it. At certain times, I'll even buy out a house cash and I'll sue for the other ownership of it. So let's say a lady only owns 50% of a property, right? Well, how do I get the other 50%? I have to buy this lady out of her 50 and then sue for the rest. That's called adverse possession. That's also in a form of what's called suit to quiet title. So, I mean, we specialize in curative title work here in San Antonio, and we've been doing it for the last, I'd say, 4.5 years of clearing title. I was trained by an attorney at the beginning, so I have a lot of knowledge on the legalities of real estate, especially here that govern Texas. Markets vary, so different real estate laws. It's insane. Like when you go into other markets, you'll know what I'm talking about. So, I mean, yeah, man, I mean, it's just been a huge expansion from where I was at the beginning to where I'm at now. that's pretty much the entire journey summed up in like a good 20 minutes.
Yeah, no, that's good. That was a good summation. So I want to get in the weeds a little bit on the current structure, right? You've grown, you've had a very strong upward progression in terms of growth compared to most companies and people getting into this business. You went from 100 square feet. Now you're going to go into 4,000 square feet. You got 20 people on your team. Everybody serves a purpose, right? I mean, they have to in order to, justify the overhead of having those people on your team or the obligation to pay them on deals. What does that team look like? There's obviously a driver, which is the marketing, which generates the leads generate the deals generate the dollars, which then pays for everything, right? How is it broken down? How many of those guys are in, let's say, acquisitions department? How many of those guys are in lead intake? What does that look like? And what is the marketing channels that you're using in order to keep that machine fed?
This is my favorite thing to talk about, bro. So it starts out at the top of a pyramid, and it's kind of like the same structure that you would see in any call center sales force. Somebody who's doing millions of dollars in revenue every single month is a buddy of mine. His name's Chris the Shark, and he has a few different offices, but his main business that pulls in the most income besides his real estate business is his cold call center, where they primarily, I'm not exactly sure what kind of business it is, but they get contracts for people who buy discounted tools. I think it's tools. But Chris is a good friend of mine. The structure is much like a call center. It starts out with myself. I am the CEO of my company. And then I have a vice president of my company, which is my business partner, Garrett Sanchez. So our goal is to keep 80% of the revenue that our company produces on a month-to-month basis. So with that being said, we had to bring in somebody who'd be willing to manage our sales force. So we have a system manager. My system manager is my business partner, Pablo Rodriguez, is a good friend of mine. He did a 12-year stretch in the federal penitentiary before he got into real estate. And systems, he used to sell cigarette cartons before they banned cigarettes in prisons. And he used to be able to offload them, and there's a system in that. I loved what he did in the prison joint of things. I brought him into the team. He had already been learning real estate, and then he oversees the entire workforce of the flow of the entire company. He's the motivator. He's the spiritual guy. He's the one who talks and everything. My business partner is 80% psychology, 20% business. I'm 80% business, 20% psychology. So I'm kind of a loose cannon. I will literally take on the craziest task that you can think of because I'm not afraid to spend money on it. We test our data and we try it over and over and over again. So with all businesses, we have a CFO and a sales manager. My CFO gets 1% of what my entire business produces on an annual basis. That's yearly. And his goal is to make sure that we hit $1 million every single month. So that is the sales manager. The sales manager and CFO goes over what we spend in marketing on a monthly basis. We have factors that change in this, right? We have the ones that are always there. Those are the expenses that are factors. Those are the ones that never change. So those values add up with the cost of operation, the cost that we spend on internet, the things that we spend on light to keep the business going. All of those things are values that do not change. And then we plug in what we spend in marketing. His job is to tell me what we spend in marketing, oversees the sales team, manages our softwares and systems to make sure that we're doing what we should be doing and producing what we should be doing. And his job is to also test what kind of data is the best in X market as we go in there and test it. He keeps track of everything. So these are called key performance indicators in your business. If you're trying to get off of the ground in your real estate business, you need to get really very, very, very familiar with what a KPI is. Because if you've been doing like shotgun marketing this entire time or blanket marketing with no sniper rifle marketing is what we'll call it, you're leaving too many holes open in your business and you can't understand what works and you're leaving it all up to chance. So we have intricate systems where we track this data, and it's all done on Excel spreadsheets that my partner, who is my CFO, has created. His name is Jason Cabrera. He just left a business to work for this company and to make more money than he was over there. He was getting paid $30,000 to $40,000 a year as a CFO, which is trash. The average CFO should be clearing anywhere between, I'd say, $250,000 to $300,000, which is what we're going to be paying our man. So he also does his job on commission, and he also gets paid a salary. So these things are different variables that change in the business. Sometimes he'll make more money just overseeing the sales floor. After that, we also have a sales manager, And the sales manager's partner is my buddy Leon Cota. We call him the John Travolta of real estate because he has long hair. He looks like the Mexican John Travolta. It's pretty funny. And he's in our office, man. He dances and stuff. He's a cool guy, bro. And he's my best friend. I've known him since I was 12 years old, since he was one of my first friends that I had made coming here to San Antonio. And he's working here in my office. And his job is to oversee the entire floor to make sure that everybody's trained. So he trains a lot of our guys on negotiation tactics, on different ways to close. So we close all of our deals over the phone. We don't even look at the property anymore. So currently we're in Texas. We're in San Antonio, Houston, Dallas, the 3 majors. We're also in Tampa. We're moving to St. Louis currently. We're going to be in San Francisco Bay Area before the month is over. It's pretty exciting, man. I mean, we've been going through so much growth.
Why San Francisco? That's kind of an anomaly compared to the other ones that you mentioned.
Yep. San Francisco, we have major connections in San Francisco. So we got a good friend out there. His name is Jimmy too. And Jimmy,
I know Jimmy well. Yeah.
Probably 3 to 4 or 5 deals in San Francisco, and each one nets him over 100 G's. So when you're dealing with a deal like that, I think he just got done closing one as a 600K pop. It makes so much sense for me to explore that market and see what we can do. Especially with our knowledge in curative title work, there's certain things that I know that I can do that not a lot of other people are willing to do. So, I mean, we have 22 houses currently sitting in escrow. Half of them are open lawsuits that we're fighting for title on right now. And those are low-hanging fruit deals that will close at one point in time. So I'm a volume-based business. You know what I'm saying? I overstack my inventory sometimes. The reason I do that is because these are deals that are going to be closing in off periods of business. Those off periods of business are basically during the holidays. Nobody wants to sell their house come November, December, October. You know what I'm saying? These are all different months where the market's, let's be brutally honest here, it's dead anywhere that you go. The only variable that doesn't change in that market when those holidays come around are pre-foreclosures. But that's what everybody hits when that time comes, because those are the only ones that you're going to find that are low-hanging fruit. I'd rather lose my house and know I had a good Christmas. That is the mentality of 80% of these sellers that we find, which is insane, but it is what it is, man. So the holidays, during those down periods of time, we're working on properties already that we've stacked throughout the entire year. Not a single lead goes by. So we're good friends with a guy named Donald Ross. Donald Ross hooked us up with something called Beast Mode software. And that is our CRM that we currently use to operate our business and track our KPIs. So our Beast Mode is integrated with our dialing system as well. So we have all of our guys hooked up on dialers, man. And 10-line dialers. I'm good friends with Chase. Chase Alcarez. He's out there in, I believe, the Phoenix area. And Chase is the founder of Call Tools. And Call Tools is what we use to plow through all of the data. They also have a built-in CRM. It's true call center quality. If you're wanting to get a discounted dialer, guys, simply go to www.calltools.com/groundzero, and I'll get you in at $99 a month. So it's a 10-line dialer. We have over 20 agents. We have a team of 5 VAs overseas that do our PM cold calling. My office is open between 9 o'clock and 6 p.m. By the time 6 p.m. hits, my VAs get logged in and they cold call until 10 o'clock at night. We have a real estate monster of a business, which is also my IG name, which is pretty funny.
Who are they calling? Like, what's the data? Who are you targeting? Are they just dialing anybody that owns property, or do you slim it down?
Hell no. We're targeted marketing in anything that we do, bro. We always test the data first. So let's say, for example, I go to Portland. I know nothing about Portland. So I'm going to try every single form of marketing that you can possibly think of. We're going to do absentee owner. We're going to do absentee high equity. We're going to do vacant. We're going to have boots on the ground build a driving for dollars list for us. We're going to go for it and send direct mail. We're going to cold call them. We're going to do text blast. We're going to do voicemail blast. We're going to do pay per click. The reason why I do so many marketing things at once is because it's the analogy, right? So I'm going to go into something pretty cool that I learned a long time ago. You can be the guy that's going to stand at the end of a pier in the middle of the ocean, and that's going to throw one rod in there. He brought his bait with him, and he brought what's been working for him to catch the fish that he likes to catch, right? You could be that guy that's waiting for a bite on the pier, or you could be the asshole that's in the speedboat that has a freaking net that's just going through the entirety of the ocean, trying to figure out what fish that he can catch and how many of that type of fish is getting caught within that net, right? That is called blanket marketing. That's blanket marketing to show the data. Once all of those leads come in, I pinpoint what lead generator was the primary one for this market. And then we go all in on that form of marketing. For example, in Texas, my primary form of marketing is tax delinquency. I love tax delinquency. I don't know a single soul who does it like we do. We pull all of our data from the courthouse. We have a guy on the back end that's a really good friend of mine. I've been playing video games with this man for a long time. His name's Derek Farrell, and he does a lot of our data and bot creation on the back end. So, I mean, you're a programmer. You guys own a company, right? What's it called?
The Driving for Dollars app.
The Driving for Dollars app, right?
Yeah.
So that's several lines of code right there. That's a system that you have to base your business off of. There's algorithms that are involved. There's variables that don't change, and there's some that do, right? From the moment I go to the Driving for Dollars app and I download it, there's a system that's developed in there, right? It's something that never changes when I input my data. You're going to get a copy of my phone number, my email address, my current address. Why are you doing all of these things? So that you can push your agenda toward me, correct? It's the same thing. You decided to take what avenue with that app? Maybe find other people that are also killing it in this business, show them your software so that they can talk about your software. What are you doing in your business? You're creating traction. You're letting people know that an application like Driving for Dollars exists, right? That's what we do for our company. We let people in your market know that a company like ours exists with the type of service that we provide and the way that we lock up deals. No, you don't have to worry about us coming to your property. This can all be done over the phone. There's a specific sales process that identifies these things. And when we jump into it, we're able to identify if it's a deal for us. So with these systems that we have in place is how we're able to pinpoint what works in a market. I love tax delinquency. I've been doing tax delinquency for over 4 years, and it's been my primary source of marketing for Texas in general. Houston has a massive tax database. So does Dallas. Dallas being as huge as it is with DFW, Tarrant County, Fort Worth, Arlington. There's so many different ways that you can work Dallas County, and there's multiple tax offices with different data. So I'm a data junkie, probably like you are, talking to me right here.
Just clarification, do you guys ever go look at any property?
We used to. If it's in San Antonio, I will. Okay. If the person wants to see somebody who's a representative for my company, we will find somebody in that area who will go and see the property on behalf of our company.
Do you think, and this is just a question off the cuff, do you think you're leaving Dealz money opportunity on the table by simply trying to lock something up over the phone versus getting face-to-face, belly-to-belly with people? Or do you find that you just have enough nets in the water that you can, fill the tanks, let's call it, without having to do that?
I'll tell you right here with 100% honesty, with the sales processes that we've implemented into our business, we are not. I've locked deals up while a guy was going out there on the appointment to see the house that we were locking up.
Okay. So that's impressive.
If you're not first, you're last, man. So, we studied a lot of sales tactics. You know what I'm saying? We have all of our guys, subscribe to so it's a good buddy of mine. He hasn't met me yet, but I call him a good buddy because he's been a blessing to our business. There's a man named John Martinez, and John Martinez is, I'll say, the cold call god. And we critique all of our guys on all of his on all of his sales and training skills so that they can lock deals up. You know what I'm saying? You go and look at some of the guys like in the Far East, like Rafael Vargas, for example. Plenty of tips and tricks if you're looking at locking deals up over the phone, and he'll tell you exactly how you can do it. It's definitely a guy that you should follow. And when you go all the way out to the West Coast, you got several killers out there like the All In family. I see the All In guys as mentors to me, and I love them to death. They're going to be speaking at my event in February. I'm super excited. But they invited us into their home. They invited us into their business. They didn't hold a damn thing back, and they shared with us several different types of systems. You look at other cats like Sean Terry, for example. Sean Terry with, I believe it's called Flip This House or Flippin' Freedom or something like that. I forgot the name of his company, but Sean Terry is an amazing man too, and he teaches his guys to do the same thing. Now, we still are in San Antonio. Don't get me wrong, but if we're going to another market, you have to trust less, man, because so many people will go and see your house for you just to lock it up on contract and leave you on the back burner. So I'd rather lock it up on contract now, find somebody who's willing to go and see the property for me and take pictures after and build that rapport. You know what I'm saying? Of course,
I ask because, in let's say Portland, for example, super competitive market. It's an equity market. Not a lot of lower price. You can't sell stuff off for people that want to buy and have portfolios, right? It's not as easy because the price points are higher. It just doesn't make sense. The 1% rule, it's like a 0.25% rule here, right? At best, if you're buying most of the time, it just doesn't make sense for the capital outlay.
What's the primary I'll say buying strategy for your market.
The primary buying strategy, it's an equity market, so it's buy and flip, right? So if you're going to keep as a rental, you're going to have to go more units to try and make it make sense, let's say. So I guess my question, for here, I'm just trying to figure out how you do it. I'm not saying you don't do it. I'm just trying to figure out, okay, how could we apply it to Portland? I'm sure people listening would love to, know that as well. But we go see stuff because we have to quantify repairs and what it's actually going to take to make that an end saleable product for whoever the end user is. It sounds like you're selling to a lot of guys that are portfolioing stuff, or are they then turning and burning it as well?
Yes. So I'm going to be also honest with this up front. I mean, I can call my guy right now and get him on the phone, and I'll literally have him on speaker, and I'll ask him what his buying strategy is, right? Because at this point, I have no idea. But he tells me this every single time because I don't know how he makes money. He just buys everything that we find. And it's one man. He's a really good friend of mine. Crazy story how we met him, and I'll actually tell you guys too, because I think this business is built on relationships, and how you choose to cultivate those relationships and water them and nurture them is going to ultimately basically show you the design of your success as you grow into the company that you're trying to create and the business that you're trying to be a part of. It's been around for the dawn of time. But for my guy, if I call him right now, I already know the first thing he's going to tell me. If I like it, I'll buy it. That's the first freaking thing he always says, right? And I'm like, well, what strategy is involved? I mean, come on, is it an owner finance deal? You're going to wrap it? You're going to buy it and wrap it? You're
Right.
going to maybe make a performing note and then sell it off to a bank? You're going to flip it or portfolio it, or how are you going to do it? You know what I'm saying? So I think one of the best ways that you can go about finding buyers that buy in a specific type of criteria. So I don't ever go into a market without educating myself on how the market is first, right? Like, it's one thing to go into a market and know that it's fire. But if you go into somewhere that's competitive, where not a lot of stuff happens, Portland, Oregon, for example, amazing for the pot industry.
Yeah.
But if you're going to go into a market that you don't understand, the first thing that I'm going to do is pull out my freaking phone, call up Tucker, invite him. I mean, I will fly to Tucker, and him and I are going to sit down, and I'm going to pick this dude's brain on everything that he knows about Portland. I'm going to study the zip codes. I'm going to study specific areas, and I'm going to go in there and I'm going to decipher if it's a market that I'm trying to get into. And I'm not trying to say that you should go and ask them how much they're going to pay for houses, because that's brokering. In Texas, that's illegal. You'll go to prison for that. You know what I'm saying? Unless you have a license, you are not allowed to broker like that. So, I mean, if you're a wholesaler that's listening to this and you're starting out, you need to be very resourceful. And the way that I found out how my market worked was by going out there and meeting the market face to face. How many killers do you know of that are doing business in Portland? I'm damn sure you can name at least 10 of them on both hands, right? Go out there, buy them food, pay for their time, whether it's in the form of mentorship or bring them a property. Put a house on contract and bring them a property. Hey, Mr. Flores, look, man, it's not a deal. All right, educate me. Why is it not a deal? Because these numbers work where I'm from. Why is it not a deal? This is why. These are the variables that govern this piece of real estate. These are the things that cannot change. These are the things that you're going to need the price at. This is why. You know what I'm saying? So if you're really trying to get into another market and you're trying to educate yourself on how that market works, you have to start by educating yourself on the buying strategies for that specific market. I already know if I'm going to Portland, Oregon, I ain't talking to anybody else but Tucker. You know what I'm saying? If Tucker tells me, because we're now on a podcast, we're like bros at this point. At this point, you will recommend me the right people to talk to, and I can trust your judgment. Since you've been in the business since the crash, I got nothing but respect for anybody who made it out of that alive. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to talk to Tucker. I'm going to pay for his time. I'm going to pay for his meal, and I'm going to let him know that he's going to be a blessing to me, and I want to make you money. My goal is to figure out how to make you money, Mr. Tucker. So let's educate myself on this, because I have the money to go into your market right now and start something. Maybe we should start something together. Together. You hear that? That's the first thing I said, together. I'm not making this about me. I'm not making this about how much money my company can make. I want this to be a win-win situation between me and an individual who's willing to educate me on this platform here, aka Portland, Oregon. So if you're listening to this business is literally all relationships. You have to cultivate them. You have to water them. You have to nurture them. You have to spend time getting to know people, especially if you're branching off into an area. Just because you heard that it's hot doesn't mean that you should be in it without first educating yourself on it. I mean, you can't tell me about wholesaling. Like, let's say we just saw some stranger down the street and I yelled at him wholesaling. And then he went and put a property on contract. And he has no idea what he's doing after that. How does that look on his reputation? It's terrible. It's terrible. So they move on to the next person. You don't want to scar your name the first month into another market. So that would be my approach, Tucker, 100%.
Well, good. It's a good one. I got another question for you.
Yeah.
Because we're talking a lot. I don't want to take up too much of your time. It's a great show, but people got other things to do. You got a big business to run. But my question for you, you've got a lot of ambition, which I respect. I see a lot of me in you when I was 28 years old. It's awesome to see that fire and that I just want to go get it, right? Like I'm just going to make shit happen. And that's awesome. What are your goals for the future? Do you see yourself wanting to climb the real estate ladder? Because right now, from what it sounds like, it's simply a wholesaling operation. Do you have desires to climb the proverbial real estate ladder in terms of types of projects that you take on, the ability to take down, renovate retail, the ability to develop, redevelop, build new? Do you have any of those desires, or do you just want to build a, let's call it a volume-based, buy it wholesale, sell it, somewhere between wholesale and retail type business?
I'd say that my end goal in mind is to own over 1,000 units in multifamily, because that had been what I had been taught when I first got into all of this stuff, was how to buy apartment complexes. So I syndicated one. It was a 20-unit apartment complex right off of San Pedro Avenue here in San Antonio. It's like right across the street from SAC. And when I syndicated that, I had two choices. I could have made $2,000 a door, which would have been a $40,000 wholesale fee, or I could have put it all on the back end, and I made a fraction of it every quarter of the year. Every 4 months, I would get paid out 3% of what it produced for the next 6 years of my life. I chose that instead because I did the numbers together, and I'd make just about 10 to 20 grand over that $40,000 wholesale fee. Not only that, but my value in that property grows as we add on to it. So, I mean, if you don't know how an apartment complex works, there's several different variables of it, but this way is specific. Most people will buy a brand new one and then do, just rent it out and make adjustments as it goes. And then you find the ones who are very distressed and they buy that one. And then they do value add. They go in there and they change out the countertops. They go in there and they add a carport. There's several different ways that multifamily works. So one of the ways that we did it is called, it's almost like a trio. So I find a lead investor who's willing to buy out the entire building. That's step one. That's me raising the private money to purchase it. Now, once I have the lead investor in mind, now it's time for me to go about and raise the money for passives, because my lead investor doesn't want to be fully responsible for the entire beast. Let's sell off some of the units for people that are wanting to get into multifamily and buy. We'll set that price higher than what we bought them for. That's the first time we make money. And then we start making money passively. We break our passives off with a portion of cash flow that they would create off of the units that they purchased. I syndicated the entire thing. So a syndicate is somebody that goes in there and puts the whole deal together. And that had been where I kind of had started with that. And that was in 2017, man. And I still own it today. It's a good investment of mine. It pays my bills. So I own currently 7 rental properties too, and I hate all of them. I'm a terrible landlord. I am. I give people chances, bro. And I'm like that in my business, bro. We hire fast. So some people would say hire slow, fire fast. We hire fast and fire fast. Because I love some of the people that I've hired in my office from the craziest walks of life, man. I got my buddy Joaquin, who's my dispo manager, right? So we have a team that does all of our dispo stuff. And he is a Yu-Gi-Oh champion. He's literally gone and played national championships and won trophies playing Yu-Gi-Oh, which is an amazing card game. I'm a huge nerd myself. You got me, ex-con, ex-drug dealer. You got my business partner, Pablo, 12 years in prison. Came out, became a real estate badass. You got my friend Dream, who does, she's my assistant, and she does, what do you call that type of singing, like where you sing like a Disney character? It's like opera, like Broadway. She's a Broadway singer. You got my buddy Jason, who's a pro skateboarder back then, turned real estate investor. He's the guy who literally manages my entire sales force. So my friend Haley, I met her spinning fire. I used to breathe fire and spin fire in like 2014, 2015. So, I mean, she's a fire spinner hippie girl, and she comes in here and she kills it. You know what I'm saying? The office vibe is so crazy. You would just never know, man. So I would say that is why I'm a terrible landlord, because I give the weirdest people chances. But I plan on selling all 7 of those properties off and going all in on my wholesaling business until I've accumulated the amount of money that I need to purchase my 1,000 units. You know what I'm saying? But we're talking about multiple millions of dollars to buy that many units. So I mean, it's been a journey, bro. It's been a journey. I've been growing into this business like crazy. I've educated myself heavily. I understand different ways that you can do real estate and real estate law. You have to separate the asset from the paperwork, right? The asset can do so much, but when you understand the paperwork, you can create an asset. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, I've done owner financing in the past as well and sold those notes off to banks, small banks and whatnot that are like in the middle of, bumfuck nowhere. And it's just like, it's just been crazy. I think the greatest lesson that I've learned, and I know we wanted to talk about that too. One of the greatest.
You beat me to the question, so good job. Yeah.
One of the greatest lessons that I've ever learned, man, was to always be growing. The moment that you stop learning is the moment that you start dying, and you have to align yourself with your purpose. I mean, so many of us, they're loose cannons, or they put it all on money. And for me, man, I mean, it's not about the money. It's about buying my time back. It's about watching my son win his first football game and being there for it. It's about watching my wife become the music star that she's always been dreaming of. It's about supporting her through that vision. Real estate allowed me to retire my wife very soon. My mother will be retired too, and I'll be able to help her the same way that she helped me throughout my childhood. But I mean, you have to surrender. You have to surrender everything that's ever happened to you. If you truly want to grow and you truly want no limits, take responsibility for things. My mother, for example, this is something I heard from Tony Robbins, and I relate to it so much. My mother was not the best mom. She was terrible at most. But all she grew up with me. We both had it bad together. I'm no one to judge my mother for the way that she raised me. We went back and forth several different times. I followed my family a lot. Many times my mother didn't believe in me. Many times she did. If I'm going to be thankful for all the good things that are happening in my life now, I have to be thankful for all the shit that I went through too. Because without that shit, I wouldn't be the man that I'm proud to be today. So surrender it all. Take 100% responsibility for everything that you've accomplished to this point. All the failures, all the heartaches, all the times that life beat you down and kept you there. Surrender it all. Take 100% responsibility for it, and then watch your life truly grow. So I'm going to go for it and leave you on that note.
I think that's great advice. I think a lot of people carry around that proverbial backpack full of shit that they just got to put down,
If you had half the life that I had, man, you got no excuses at this point. Don't get shown up by a dude who only ever worked at Jack in the Box and only made it to 9th grade and was just known for drug dealing. If you get shown up by me, you're not doing enough. So I'm letting you guys know right now, I'm no one special. If I can do this, I can do this. Coming from where I come from, there's just no excuse, man. And I mean, I believe in you. If you're listening to this, I believe in you. I believe in you. So, yeah. If you're wanting to get in contact with me.
That's the next one. Man, you're good. You are on it.
I remember the questions, bro. I remember the questions. If you want to get in contact with me, you can join my Facebook group, Wholesaling Houses Ground Zero. You can follow me on Instagram at realestate_monster. And if you need any help with your businesses, I'd love to help you. I give this all the way for free, man. So just let me know.
Very cool. Well, hey, I appreciate your time today. Great story. It's interesting for me to hear somebody, looking back 11 years ago where I was at, where I wanted to go, and looking at you and where you've, come from, what you've been able to build, and of course, where you're going to go. It's been a meteoric rise, and it's been awesome to see, and it's been even cooler to get to know you a little better and really kind of get the finer details of it all.
Dude, the feeling's mutual, Tucker. Thank you so much for having me, man. We started using the Driving for Dollars app. My guys are literally out right now doing that and using your app. So it's super exciting, man. I look forward to the many updates that you're going to be having to the application and growing with you guys. If I need a deal in Portland, you're the first guy that I'm going to think of. So thanks, everybody, also for listening. Thank you so much. I mean, it means the world to me. If you have anything that I can help you with, just feel free to reach out, okay?
Very cool. We will have all the info in the show notes. And thanks for your time.
Thank you, Tucker. God bless, guys.
All right. What do you guys think of that interview with Mr. Flores? Pretty good, huh? Guy can talk better than I can. I'll give him that. He's a solid dude. He's built a really phenomenal business in a short amount of time. It's really cool for me to see these younger bucks, we'll call them, I'm getting to be a little older, I guess, that are really kind of taking off, and they're doing some things that weren't done back when I was that age. The business was very different. The types of businesses that were out there were very different. But now with technology and just the way this business has grown, it's really cool to see kind of the different shapes and forms that the wholesaling world is taking on. And obviously, he's got one of those. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the interview. If you want to follow him, of course, he told you where to do that at the end of the interview. But all around great guy, and I thank him for his time, and hopefully you guys enjoyed the interview. Now, before I leave you this week, I want to leave you with a closing success quote, as I always do. And I figured this quote would play in nicely to Quentin's story and just the interview. I don't know who said it, but it's a great quote, so here we go. Never forget how wildly capable you are. I hope you guys dug this interview. Hope you guys like that quote, and I'll see you all next week.